Oh, well,
Hello there.
what is up YouTube, and welcome to Game Programming Patterns inside UE4 and Unity. My name is Kamal Aita, I'm a software engineer at GameHermits. Stick along to the end of the video to know more about me and my team. Anyways, in this series we are going to talk about different design patterns and how to implement them inside UE4 and Unity. To follow along with this series, I expect you to have a good knowledge of OOP as well as the engine we're using, because I'm not going to explain every little bit of detail inside the code, and I'm going to focus more on developing the design pattern itself. Anyways, let's get into it. Our discuss today is going to be about Service-Locator pattern, and although it's infamous for being an anti-design pattern, if used right, it can replace singletons completely, and with the right documentation, it can boost the code and make it very much flexible. So let's go up about the definition, the pros and cons of this design pattern. So the service locator pattern aims to make up for every singleton weakness, and how we do this is as follows. You have a class, you have a lot of classes in your code, in your game, and you want to be able to access different services throughout the whole code without referencing them around. And to do this, let's say for example you have service A, it's your game manager, service B is your audio manager, service C is your cinematic manager, etc, etc. And how we are going to implement this, the simplest way is to just make every single service as a singleton. However, this can prove headache very quickly because say you want to make a unit test, and this unit test will need you to modify your game manager to suit this case of testing. So you have to modify your game manager to suit your test case, and when you're done, you're going to make it back to the production game manager with extra notes that this game manager won't work right now, for example, until a dependency is cleared, which is a lot of headache. However, with service locator pattern, you can replace all of that headache with a central singleton repository called locator. How this works is basically a class A calls a locator, and this locator is a medium between our services and our classes. This locator have an implementation to different services. So for example, we have an iGame manager. This iGame manager, we can implement different game manager out of it, and we can tell the locator which service are we going to use in the game. This is how we are going to make up for this, for the singleton weakness. So in this way, you can create a game manager, a temporary game manager that is only there for your unit testing, for example, and when you are finished, you can just replace it. You can just take out the code that tells the locator, hey, use my game manager instead of the production game manager. And even if there are no game manager references and we didn't tell the locator which one to use, the locator is going by default to have an empty service that we can make it as a logged service, so we do not run into null references. And this is basically how the service locator works. So the pros and cons of service locator, the pros are it is very flexible because it's basically implemented using solid principles. It is highly maintainable because you can provide whatever implementation of an interface you want, and also it basically replaces singletons. So if you in need of using singletons, just use service locators. Now the cons of service locators is that it kind of violates the OOP principles because it's static, and statics are old school programming, right? And if used wrong, it can mess up your whole code because it actually hides the dependencies. So this class A, you don't know what class A depends on because you only know that it depends on service locator, but you do not know which implementation of these services are dependable. So you can have a single implementation that class A depends on, and if you pass in other implementations, class A is going to crash. This is a little bit of a problem, and you need to be careful using that. Also, if you have a lot of dependencies in your code, you should consider implementing dependency injection pattern, which we will be covering later in this tutorial series, instead of service locator. However, if you just think that your code is in need for multiple singletons, service locator is the design pattern you need. Let's see this in action. As you can see here, I have an empty scene, an empty project, and yeah, let's go ahead and make our first interface, and this is going to be iGame Manager. For the sake of example, we're going to implement a service called Game Manager, which is it basically just pauses the game and just like display paused or unpaused. For the sake of simplicity and example, you can do whatever you want in your services. I'm just going to show you the optimal approach on implementing Service Locator inside Unity. So first of all, we need to clear this and turn iGame Manager into public interface iGame Manager, which is going to have a pool is paused, which is going to be a getter, and is going to have a void pause game. Nice. Now we want to implement this interface, and to do this, we go ahead and create another C# script. Oh. Another C# script is called null game manager. This is going to be our default game manager if we didn't provide any services to the service locator. This is what's going to be our default implementation, so that we do not run into null references. Also, we can turn this into a logged service, for example, which is going to be very useful in some cases. So it inherits from iGame Manager. Oh. And let's implement this. Also, we don't need this. So let's make our private pool here. So private pool is paused equals false by default, and our getter is going to is paused. And in both game, we're just going to do nothing. That's right, you heard me. We are just going to do nothing. Actually, we can just erase this and just turn true. So in this null game manager, we do nothing. We just basically do nothing. We just it's a sandbox, so that it does not just return null or anything. Alright, so let's go ahead and create our actual game manager here. game manager. Alright. So this also inherits from iGameManager. Let's delete this, we don't need it. Implement interface. So here is where we're going to make our pool is posed. And we are going to get our is posed. And in here we just is posed equals the opposite of is posed. Yeah. So we're just going to pause and unpause the game, right? Okay. So now we have our services. We want to implement the locator. To do this, we are going to make a C# script Service-Locator, and it's not going to inherit mono behavior as well. However, it's going to be a static public class. So in this static class, everything is going to be static, of course. So static iGameManager, game manager. This is going to be the game manager, the instance of iGameManager that we deal with, and we will provide which implementation to do in the game constructor in a bit. Static null game manager, null game manager. This is going to be our default, as we said. Now we want two functions, initialize and provide. The initialize service is the initialize function is just, it initializes our services, every single service we have here, to its null version. So game manager equals null game manager. So by default, our game manager is going to be the null version of it. And static void provide, and this is going to provide which implementation of iGameManager are we going to use. So iGameManager new game manager, and what this does is our game manager equals new game manager, as easy as that. And the last thing that we want to do is static iGameManager get game manager, which is going to return our game manager, of course. So return game manager. And there's just one thing we need to do, and turn this into public. Oops, typos. Alright, so this is how you implement a simple service locator, and as you can see, you will have all your services and their null versions. In the initialize, you're going to initialize all your services to their null versions, and you will have as many overloaded provide as there is of your services. So you can have like a provide for iGame Manager, another provide for iAudio Manager, another provide for iCinematic Manager, etc., etc. So let's go ahead and make our game constructor. So we make C# script game constructor. This is actually going to be our first mono behavior class. So we will implement awake. In awake, we will call our service locator. This is how we use the pattern. Dot initialize. This is our first method. We have to do this. If we didn't do this, everything's going to crash. So then we are going to implement in game manager. Let's call it desired game manager equals new game manager. So we are going to choose game manager to be our implementation. Maybe you have like game manager production, a game manager unit testing, a game manager your name, for example, etc., etc. Now we'll call service locator dot provide desired game manager. This is the beauty of service locator, which is this is the only code that you will need to change in order to change a service. You will not need to go into the game manager, change whatever code you want to change just to suit your test cases or whatever you're implementing. You can make an entire new implementation of the game manager that suits your implementations and then just provides it. This is the beauty of and flexible ways of service locator. Now that's it. So to test this, we'll have like a script that checks for pause or unpause. So let's say pause. And let's say, for example, on GUI, if service locator dot get game manager, whatever our implementation is, dot is paused, then we will say GUI dot label new rect. Let's say, for example, 10 by 10. No, 10, 10. Let's say 100 by 20. And we'll say paused. Right? So if we pause the game, we will this is going to appear on the screen. And the last thing we want to do is update. So if input dot get key, for example, up, key code, let's say B. We're going to make service locator dot get game manager dot pause game, like that. So let's test this. Let's put this on our main camera, and let's put this also on our main camera. We don't need our main camera here. Alright. So now if I press P, it's paused. If I press P again, it's unpaused. This is the simplest way I could explain Service Locator to you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to know more about me and GameHermits, we are working on an RTS game called Valkyrie. You can check it out on Twitter or on Facebook. I'll leave links in the description below. If you love these kind of videos and want to see more design patterns implemented inside Unity and Unreal, leave a like, subscribe, and leave me a comment on how I can improve on these videos. I'll also have a link in the description on the first episode, which was the Service Locator implementation inside Unreal Engine. Thank you and goodbye.